She found the messages on a Tuesday morning. By Friday, her cheating husband had lost everything he cared about. His reputation? Destroyed. His business? Crumbling. His future? In ruins. But here's the thing that'll shock you. She never raised her voice, never caused a scene, and never broke a single law. This is the story of the most calculated revenge I've ever witnessed. And I should know because I'm her divorce lawyer. What this woman did in just 3 weeks will leave you speechless. My name is Jennifer Torres, and I've been practicing family law for 15 years in Chicago. I've seen every kind of divorce you can imagine. The messy ones, the sad ones, the ones where people throw plates at each other in my office. But what happened with Sarah Mitchell? That case still keeps me up at night. Not because it was traumatic, but because it was a masterclass in strategic thinking. Sarah walked into my office on a Wednesday afternoon in late September, and from the moment I saw her, I knew this wasn't going to be a typical case. She was 34 years old, wearing a navy blazer and cream blouse, her dark hair pulled back in a neat ponytail. Most women who've just discovered their husband's affair come to me looking devastated. Red eyes, tissues in hand, barely able to speak without breaking down. Sarah Mitchell looked like she was about to deliver a PowerPoint presentation to a board of directors. Her eyes weren't puffy from crying. They were sharp, focused, and, honestly, a little bit terrifying. She sat down in my office, placed her designer handbag carefully on the chair beside her, and pulled out a leather portfolio like she was opening a business proposal. "Thank you for seeing me on such short notice, Miss Torres," she said, her voice completely steady. "I need to divorce my husband, and I need to do it strategically." I pulled out my legal pad, already intrigued. Strategic. That's not a word most people use when they're talking about ending their marriage. "Tell me what happened," I said. Sarah opened her portfolio and slid a printed screenshot across my desk. It was a text message conversation, and what I read made my blood boil on her behalf. The messages were between her husband Marcus and someone named Amber. "Can't wait to see you tonight," Marcus had written. "Told Sarah I have a late meeting." Amber's response? A laughing emoji and, "Your wife really believes that?" But it was Marcus's next message that really got me. She believes everything I tell her. She's too busy with her little yoga studio to notice anything. Then Amber asked when he was going to leave Sarah. And Marcus replied, "Soon, babe. Just need to figure out the financial stuff. Most of the assets are in my name anyway." I looked up at Sarah, expecting to see pain or anger in her face. Instead, she was watching me with the same calm, analytical expression. "I found these yesterday morning," she explained. Marcus left his iPad on the kitchen counter. He doesn't know I have his passcode. There are 6 months of messages between them, hundreds of them. I started to offer my sympathy, but she held up her hand to stop me. "Don't be sorry, Miss Torres. I'm not here for sympathy. I did my research, and you're the best divorce attorney in this city. I'm here because I want to make sure Marcus regrets what he's done, and I'm here because everything I do needs to be completely legal. That's where you come in." I leaned back in my chair, studying this woman who was so composed while her world had just collapsed. "Sarah, I need to understand your goals. What exactly are you hoping to achieve?" She smiled then. And it wasn't a warm smile. It was the smile of someone who'd spent 24 hours planning someone's complete downfall. "I'm going to achieve justice, Miss Torres. My husband thinks I'm stupid. He thinks I'm just the wife who stays home with our 6-year-old daughter and runs a little yoga studio that barely makes money. He has no idea that I had a full scholarship to Northwestern. He has no idea I gave up a career in corporate finance to support his dreams of building a real estate empire. And he certainly has no idea what I'm capable of when someone betrays me like this." She pulled out another document, this time a detailed spreadsheet. "I've spent the last 24 hours documenting everything. Every asset we own, every bank account, every investment property, every credit card. I've also documented every text message, every suspicious charge, every late night at the office that was actually a date with his girlfriend. I've been meticulous because I'm going to take him apart piece by piece. and I'm going to do it so carefully that he won't even see it coming until it's too late. I looked at the spreadsheet she'd created, and I was genuinely impressed. It was color-coded, cross-referenced, organized by date and category. This wasn't the work of someone emotional and reactive. This was the work of someone strategic and brilliant. "Sarah, this is impressive work," I said honestly. "But I need to ask why revenge is so important to you. Why not just file for divorce, take your fair share, and move on with your life?" Her eyes went cold in a way that made me understand why Marcus had made a terrible mistake underestimating her. Because Marcus didn't just cheat on me, Miss Torres. He stole 7 years of my life. He convinced me to quit my job to support his career. He made me believe that my yoga studio was just a cute hobby while he built his real business. He dismissed every accomplishment I made, talked down to me in front of friends, made me feel small and insignificant. And now, according to these messages, he's been planning for months to divorce me and leave me with as little as possible while he rides off into the sunset with a woman 10 years younger than me. He's been laughing at me with his girlfriend, calling me stupid, saying I believe everything he tells me. She leaned forward, and for the first time, I saw real emotion flash across her face. I'm not going to let that happen. I'm going to make sure Marcus learns that actions have consequences. I'm going to show him that the woman he underestimated is smarter than he ever imagined. And I'm going to do it all legally, strategically, and so thoroughly that by the time I'm done, he'll wish he'd been faithful. Not because I hurt him, but because he destroyed himself and I just made sure everyone could see it. I nodded slowly, feeling a sense of professional excitement I rarely experienced. All right then, let's talk about what's legally possible and how we're going to make this happen. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button, like, and share so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Over the next 2 hours, Sarah and I went through every single detail of her marriage, and what I discovered was absolutely fascinating. Marcus Mitchell was a successful real estate developer who owned a company called Mitchell Properties. The company had grown substantially over the 7 years of their marriage. He drove a BMW, wore expensive suits, belonged to the right clubs, and by all appearances was living the American dream. But here's what Marcus didn't know, and this is where Sarah's story gets really interesting. That little yoga studio he was so dismissive about, it wasn't little at all. "My studio is called Serenity Wellness," Sarah explained, pulling out another set of meticulously organized documents. "Marcus thinks it barely makes enough money to cover its costs. He thinks I run it to stay busy while taking care of our daughter, Emma. He gives me an allowance from his business account for household expenses and considers that his contribution to our family. He stopped looking at the studio's financials about 3 years ago because he decided it wasn't a real business." She smiled slightly as she slid a financial statement across my desk. "The reality is very different. I've been extremely strategic about how I've run Serenity Wellness. I incorporated it in my name only, which means it's my separate property. I've reinvested most of the profits back into the business, so on paper it looks barely profitable. But we now have 3 locations across the city, 12 full-time employees, over 200 regular clients, and a growing online subscription service. Our actual gross revenue last year was close to $800,000. I raised my eyebrows in genuine surprise. "And Marcus has no idea about any of this?" Sarah shook her head. "Marcus hasn't asked about the studio in years. Once he decided it wasn't worth his attention, he completely checked out. He has no idea I've been building something substantial. He has no idea that while he was out cheating on me and planning to leave me broke, I was creating my own financial security. That's going to be his first surprise when we file for divorce." I was starting to really like Sarah Mitchell. She wasn't just smart. She was playing chess while Marcus thought they were playing checkers. "Tell me about the assets that are in his name," I said, ready to start building our case. Sarah pulled up another spreadsheet on her tablet. "The house is in both our names. It's worth about $1.2 million, with about $400,000 left on the mortgage. His business, Mitchell Properties, is valued at approximately $3.5 million. He has a retirement account worth about $300,000. We have a joint savings account with 50,000 and joint checking with usually around 20,000. He also has a BMW that's fully paid off, worth about 70,000, and we own a small vacation condo in Michigan, worth about 200,000. That's also in both names. I was doing the math in my head. This was a substantial marital estate, probably worth close to $5 million in total assets. Sarah was entitled to half of that, possibly more depending on how the case played out. Now tell me about the girlfriend, I said. This Amber person, what do you know about her? Sarah's expression hardened slightly. Amber Castellano, 26 years old, blonde, pretty in a very obvious way. She works as a marketing consultant for Marcus's company, though I use the term consultant very loosely. Based on the text messages, her primary job qualification seems to be being available whenever Marcus wants her. The affair has been going on for at least 6 months, based on the messages I found, but I suspect it started even earlier than that. Marcus is careful about deleting older messages, but he slipped up this time. She pulled out another printed screenshot. But here's what really made me angry. Look at this message from 3 weeks ago. I read the message and felt my own anger rising. Marcus had written to Amber saying he'd talked to a lawyer friend about divorce and been told that Sarah wouldn't get much because the business was in his name and he could prove she didn't contribute to it. He'd also said Sarah's yoga studio was basically worthless. Then Amber had asked if they could be together soon, and Marcus had replied that probably by Christmas, he just needed to time it right. He's been planning this for months, I said, shaking my head. He's been strategizing how to divorce you while keeping as much money as possible for himself. Sarah nodded. Exactly. He was planning to ambush me with divorce papers, probably around the holidays when I'd be emotional and vulnerable. He thought I'd be so devastated that I'd sign whatever he put in front of me without really looking at it. He thought I was too stupid and too dependent on him to protect myself. That was his biggest mistake, Miss Torres. He underestimated me. I looked at this remarkable woman sitting across from me and felt a surge of professional determination. He's not going to know what hit him, is he? Sarah's smile was sharp and satisfied. No, he's not. Because while he's been planning to ambush me, I've been planning something much bigger. I'm not just going to divorce him. I'm going to make sure he loses everything that matters to him. His reputation, his business standing, his social position. By the time I'm done, Marcus Mitchell is going to be a cautionary tale about what happens when you underestimate your wife. What's your timeline? I asked, already thinking through strategy. Sarah checked her watch with the precision of someone who'd planned every detail. Today is Wednesday, September 27th. This weekend, Marcus is going to Las Vegas for what he's telling me is a business conference. Based on the text messages, Amber is meeting him there. They're staying at the Bellagio in a suite, and Marcus charged it to our joint credit card. I couldn't help but shake my head at his arrogance. Charging a romantic getaway with his girlfriend to a credit card his wife could see? That was almost insultingly careless. While he's in Vegas having his fun, Sarah continued, I'm going to start executing my plan. I need your help to make sure everything I do is completely legal and will hold up in court. I also need recommendations for a private investigator and a forensic accountant. Can you help me with that? I smiled. Sarah, I can absolutely help you with that. In fact, I think we're going to make a great team. Over the next hour, Sarah laid out her plan with military precision, and I have to say, it was brilliant. First, she wanted to hire a private investigator to document the Las Vegas trip. Photos, videos, timestamps, everything. She wanted irrefutable proof that Marcus had lied about a business conference and was actually on a romantic getaway with his girlfriend. I recommended Richard Chen, a former police detective who now worked as a private investigator. Richard was discreet, thorough, and his evidence always held up perfectly in court. If you are still here, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button, like and share so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Second, Sarah wanted to hire a forensic accountant to dig into Marcus's business finances. She suspected he'd been hiding assets and maybe even committing tax fraud in preparation for divorcing her. I recommended Patricia Williams, who was the best forensic accountant in the city. If Marcus was hiding money anywhere, Patricia would find it. But here's where Sarah's plan got really interesting. She didn't just want to win the divorce. She wanted to destroy Marcus's reputation. Marcus's entire self-image is built on being successful and respected, Sarah explained. He's on the board of the Chamber of Commerce. He's been trying to get appointed to the City Planning Commission. He does charity work and always makes sure the local newspaper knows about it. He loves being seen as a pillar of the community. A family man. A successful entrepreneur. His reputation is everything to him. I could see where this was going. And you want to take that away from him? Sarah nodded. Not just take it away. I want to let the truth take it away. There's a difference. I'm not going to lie about him or make things up. I'm just going to make sure the right people know exactly who Marcus Mitchell really is. I'm going to make sure everyone who respects him, everyone who does business with him, everyone who thinks he's such a great guy, he knows that he's actually a cheater and a liar who betrayed his wife and family. She pulled out an invitation. In 3 weeks, Mitchell Properties is hosting its annual charity gala. It's a huge event, about 300 people, all the important business leaders in the city, clients, investors, partners, city officials, everyone who matters. Marcus gives a speech every year about family values and giving back to the community. It's his big moment to shine. I felt a chill run down my spine because I suddenly understood exactly what Sarah was planning. You're going to expose him at the gala. Sarah shook her head. Not exactly. If I stood up and made a scene, I'd look like the crazy, vindictive wife. That would make people sympathize with him, not me. No, I'm going to be much more subtle than that. I'm going to attend the gala as the perfect, supportive wife. I'm going to smile and be charming and gracious. And then, very carefully, very strategically, I'm going to have some private conversations with key people. By the end of the night, everyone who matters in Marcus's professional world will know what he did, but no one will be able to say, I caused a scene or acted inappropriately. It was brilliant and terrifying at the same time. Sarah, you have to be very careful about this. If you say anything that's not true, you could be sued for defamation. She looked at me with those cold, focused eyes. Everything I say will be completely true and completely provable. I'm going to have documentation for everything. His affair, the credit card charges, the hidden money, all of it. I'm not going to exaggerate or embellish. I'm just going to inform certain people about facts they have a right to know. I leaned back in my chair, impressed despite myself. All right, Sarah. Let's make sure we do this right. But I have to ask you something honestly. Why is revenge so important to you? I understand being angry and hurt. But this level of calculated planning, this determination to destroy not just the marriage but his entire life, that's unusual. What's really driving this? For the first time since she'd walked into my office, Sarah's composure cracked just slightly. Her eyes became glassy, though no tears actually fell. Her voice remained steady, but I could hear the pain underneath it. Because for 7 years, Marcus has made me feel small, Miss Torres. Every time I mentioned an accomplishment at the studio, he'd brush it off or change the subject. When friends asked about my business, he'd laugh and call it my little hobby. When I suggested business ideas, he'd pat me on the head like I was a child and explain why I didn't understand how the real world worked. He made me doubt myself, made me feel like I was lucky he married me, like I should be grateful he provided for our family while I played at being a businesswoman. She took a breath, steadying herself. And now I've discovered that while he was making me feel worthless, he was cheating on me. While he was dismissing my intelligence, he was planning to divorce me and take everything. While he was telling me he loved me, he was laughing about me with his girlfriend, calling me stupid and gullible. He didn't just betray me romantically, Miss Torres. He betrayed every bit of trust I had in him. And he did it while making me feel like I was nothing. A single tear rolled down her cheek, but her voice remained strong. I'm not doing this just for revenge, though I won't lie and say that's not part of it. I'm doing this because Marcus needs to face consequences for his actions. I'm doing this because I want every other man like him to see what happens when you underestimate your wife and betray her trust. I'm doing this because I want my daughter Emma to grow up knowing that her mother didn't just accept being treated badly. She stood up for herself. She was strong. She fought back. She wiped the tear away and her expression hardened again. And yes, I'm doing this because Marcus deserves to hurt the way he hurt me. Not physically, but in every other way possible. I want him to lose everything that matters to him and know it was his own fault. I nodded slowly, understanding completely. All right then, Sarah. Let's make sure Marcus Mitchell regrets the day he decided to cheat on you. Let's make sure he learns that actions have consequences. And let's make sure we do it all completely legally so he can't touch you for it. Sarah smiled, and this time there was real warmth in it. Thank you, Miss Torres. I have a feeling this is going to be the beginning of a very productive partnership. She was absolutely right about that. What happened over the next few weeks was one of the most impressive strategic takedowns I've ever witnessed in my career. And I've been doing this for 15 years. Sarah Mitchell didn't just win her divorce. She orchestrated a masterpiece of calculated revenge that left her husband with nothing while she walked away with everything she deserved. And it all started that weekend in Las Vegas. The following Friday, Marcus kissed his wife and daughter goodbye, told them he loved them, and drove off to catch his flight to Vegas for his business conference. Sarah called me from home that evening, and I could hear the determination in her voice. He's gone. He actually kissed me and told me he'd miss me. He looked Emma in the eyes and promised to bring her back a present. And then he drove straight to the airport to meet his girlfriend. I could hear the pain underneath her anger, but her voice was steady. How are you holding up, Sarah? I asked. I'm fine. Actually, I'm better than fine. Now that things are in motion, I feel focused and clear. The PI you recommended, Richard Chen, he's already in Vegas. He confirmed that Marcus and Amber checked into the Bellagio together at 3 this afternoon. They're in a suite on the 30th floor. Over the weekend, Richard sent regular updates that Sarah forwarded to me. Photos of Marcus and Amber having romantic dinners at expensive restaurants. Videos of them walking through the casino holding hands and laughing. Time-stamped images of them entering and leaving the hotel suite together. Kissing in the elevator. Acting like a couple without any shame or concern that someone might see them. But Sarah wasn't just collecting evidence of the affair. She was also making other strategic moves. On Saturday morning, while Marcus was in Vegas, Sarah met with Patricia Williams, the forensic accountant I'd recommended. Patricia spent 4 hours at Sarah's house going through every financial document Sarah had managed to gather. Sarah called me Sunday evening with an update, and she sounded excited in a grim sort of way. Patricia found something really interesting, Miss Torres. Marcus has been transferring money into an LLC I didn't know existed. It's called MMP Holdings, and over the past 2 years, he's moved about $300,000 into it. On his business books, it shows up as business expenses, but Patricia thinks it's actually just a way to hide marital assets from me in preparation for divorce. This was exactly what we needed. Can Patricia prove it? I asked. She says she needs to dig deeper, but yes, she thinks she can prove it. She also found evidence that Marcus has been underreporting income on our joint tax returns. Not enough to trigger an IRS audit, probably, but enough that it's technically tax fraud. Patricia thinks Marcus has been planning this divorce for longer than 6 months, maybe even over a year. The pieces were falling into place perfectly. Sarah, this changes the entire case. If we can prove Marcus has been hiding assets in anticipation of divorce, the court is going to come down on him hard. Judges hate it when people try to cheat their spouses out of what they're legally entitled to. Sarah's voice was satisfied. That's exactly what Patricia said. She's going to prepare a complete forensic report with all her findings. By the time we file for divorce, we'll have documentation of everything Marcus has done wrong. Over the weekend, Marcus called Sarah twice from Vegas. Both times he told her about how boring the conference sessions were and how much he missed her and Emma. Sarah told me later that listening to him lie so smoothly actually made her feel better about what she was planning. If I'd had any doubts about destroying his life, those phone calls erased them, she said. He's such a convincing liar. If I didn't have proof, I'd believe every word. That's what makes this even worse. He's not just cheating. He's really, really good at lying about it. Marcus returned home Sunday evening full of stories about the conference and bringing Sarah an expensive bracelet he'd bought with their joint credit card. "You didn't have to do that," Sarah said, playing the role of grateful wife perfectly. Marcus kissed her forehead. "I wanted to. You deserve it for taking care of everything while I was gone. I know it's not easy being alone with Emma all weekend." Sarah told me later that it took every ounce of her self-control not to throw the bracelet in his face and tell him she knew everything. But she smiled, thanked him, wore the bracelet, and even cooked his favorite dinner that night. She was playing the long game, and she was playing it brilliantly. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, Sarah was executing the next phase of her plan. On Monday, she met with me again to review everything we'd gathered so far. I spread out Richard's PI report, Patricia's preliminary forensic findings, and all the documented evidence Sarah had collected herself. "This is solid," I told her honestly. "We have clear evidence of adultery. We have proof of dissipation of marital assets, with all the charges for the affair. We have evidence of hidden assets and potentially tax fraud. This is much more than we need to win a divorce case." "When should we file?" Sarah asked, leaning forward with intense focus. I pulled out a calendar. "Tell me again about Marcus's timeline. The big commercial development deal closes when?" Sarah checked her notes. "November 15th. That's the Oak Street project. It's supposed to bring in about $2 million in profit to the company." I marked the date on the calendar. "And the charity gala?" "November 18th. 3 days later." I thought about the strategy for a moment. Here's what I'm thinking. We file on November 16th. That's the day after the commercial deal closes, which means the profit from that deal is definitively marital property that he can't claim was earned after separation. It's also 2 days before the gala, which means Marcus will be served with divorce papers right before the biggest social event of his year. He'll be completely blindsided, and he'll have to decide whether to cancel the event or go through with it while everyone knows his marriage just imploded. Sarah's smile was sharp and satisfied. He'll go through with it. Marcus would never cancel the gala. His ego won't let him. Which means he'll be standing up there giving a speech about family values, while everyone in the room knows he cheated on his wife. "Exactly," I said. "And here's another advantage of filing when we do. Since we're filing first, we control the narrative and the initial court filings. We can request immediate temporary orders to freeze all marital assets and prevent him from transferring money. We can also request exclusive use of the marital home, which would mean Marcus has to move out immediately. With the evidence we have of him hiding assets and dissipating marital funds, the judge will almost certainly grant those orders." Sarah was nodding, following the strategy perfectly. "So when Marcus gets served on November 16th, he'll also get temporary orders that freeze his business accounts and kick him out of his own house?" I smiled. "That's exactly what I'm proposing. He'll have maybe 24 hours to pack up and find somewhere else to live before the gala. It's going to be the worst week of his life." For the first time since I'd met her, Sarah laughed. It wasn't a happy laugh exactly, but it was genuine. "Good. That's exactly what he deserves. What about Emma? How do we handle custody?" I pulled out the custody petition I'd been drafting. "We file for primary physical custody with you, with Marcus getting standard visitation, probably every other weekend and 1 evening a week. Given that you've been Emma's primary caregiver throughout the marriage and Marcus travels frequently for work, that should be straightforward." Sarah nodded. "I don't want to keep Emma from her father. Despite everything, Marcus loves her in his own way. But I need to be her primary parent. I need to know she's stable and safe." I made a note. "We'll make that clear in the filing. This isn't about punishing Marcus through his daughter. It's about maintaining stability for Emma during a difficult transition." We spent another hour going over every detail of the filing. By the time Sarah left my office that day, we had a complete battle plan. File on November 16th. Request immediate temporary orders. Freeze all assets. Exclusive use of the home. Primary custody. Full forensic accounting. It was comprehensive, strategic, and designed to hit Marcus from every possible angle. But the divorce filing was only part of Sarah's plan. The other part, the part that would really destroy Marcus's reputation, was going to happen at the charity gala 2 days later. Sarah spent the next 3 weeks preparing for that night with the same meticulous attention to detail she'd applied to everything else. She made a list of every important person who would be at the gala and planned exactly what she would say to each of them. She even worked with a friend who did PR consulting to craft her story in a way that would be sympathetic without seeming vindictive. The key is vulnerability, her friend advised. You need to seem hurt but dignified, betrayed but graceful. You want people to feel protective of you and angry at Marcus on your behalf. That's how you turn his entire social and professional network against him without looking like you're trying to do it. Sarah practiced her talking points until they sounded natural. She rehearsed looking sad but brave. She chose her dress carefully, something elegant and expensive but not flashy. Everything was designed to present her as the wronged woman who was trying to hold her head high despite her pain. Meanwhile, Marcus was completely oblivious to what was coming. He came home each night and talked about work stress, complained about difficult clients, and mentioned how important the upcoming gala was for networking. He told Sarah that once the Oak Street deal closed, they'd finally have real financial security. "We're going to be set for life after this, honey," he said one night over dinner. "This is the deal I've been working toward for 3 years." Sarah smiled and said she was proud of him, all while knowing that half of that profit was legally hers and that she was going to make sure she got every penny of it. On November 15th, the commercial development deal finally closed. Marcus came home that night with champagne and that huge smile on his face. "We did it!" he announced, popping the cork. "Oak Street is officially closed. The profit is going to be about $2.1 million once all the costs are settled. This is the biggest deal Mitchell Properties has ever done. We've made it. Sarah, we've really made it." Sarah clinked her glass against his, playing along perfectly. "To your success," she said. "To our future," Marcus replied. "To getting everything we deserve." He didn't catch the double meaning in Sarah's words, but I would have if I'd been there. The next morning, November 16th, Sarah woke up early. Marcus was still asleep beside her, snoring softly. She looked at him for a long moment. This man she'd loved and trusted for 7 years. This man who'd betrayed her so completely, while making her feel like she should be grateful for his attention. Then she got up, got dressed in one of her power outfits, and got Emma ready for school. Emma was chattering about her upcoming school play, completely unaware that her parents' marriage was about to implode. Sarah dropped her off at school with extra hugs and kisses, then drove straight to my office. At exactly 10 o'clock in the morning, a process server walked into Mitchell Properties and asked for Marcus Mitchell. According to witnesses who were there, Marcus looked up from his desk with his usual confident smile. "That's me. What can I do for you?" The process server handed him a thick envelope. "Marcus Mitchell, you've been served with divorce proceedings. Have a nice day." The smile disappeared from Marcus's face instantly. His secretary said later that she'd never seen him look so shocked. He opened the envelope right there in front of everyone, and as he read through the petition, his face went from shocked to pale to almost grey. The divorce petition wasn't just a simple filing. It was 40 pages long and included every piece of evidence we'd gathered. The text messages with Amber, the photos from Vegas, the credit card statements showing dissipation of marital assets, Patricia's preliminary forensic report about the hidden LLC. Everything was laid out in black and white for Marcus, and eventually for the court to see. But that wasn't even the worst part. Attached to the divorce petition was our motion for immediate temporary orders. We were asking the court to freeze all business and personal accounts, grant Sarah exclusive use of the marital home, award her primary custody of Emma, order Marcus to pay temporary support, and prohibit him from transferring or hiding any additional assets. Marcus immediately tried calling Sarah. She didn't answer. He tried 3 more times, then started texting. "What the hell is this? Sarah, call me now. This is insane. We need to talk about this. Pick up your damn phone." Sarah showed me the messages later that afternoon, smiling slightly. "He's panicking. Let him panic." The divorce papers being served was devastating enough for Marcus, but what happened that afternoon was even worse. The judge reviewed our motion for temporary orders along with all our supporting evidence, and at 4 o'clock that afternoon, the judge granted every single thing we'd requested. Every single thing. All of Mitchell Properties' business accounts were immediately frozen pending the divorce proceedings. Marcus couldn't access business funds, couldn't pay employees, couldn't move money anywhere without court approval. The judge also granted Sarah exclusive use of the marital home, which meant Marcus was legally ordered to vacate the property by 8 o'clock that evening. He could take personal belongings and clothing only. Everything else stayed with Sarah. The judge awarded Sarah primary physical custody of Emma pending a full custody hearing. Marcus was granted supervised visitation only, every other Saturday, until he could prove stable housing and lifestyle. The judge ordered Marcus to pay Sarah $5,000 per month in temporary spousal and child support, starting immediately. And finally, the judge ordered Marcus to pay all of Sarah's attorney fees, which were already substantial and would only grow as the case continued. At 4:30, a second process server found Marcus still at his office and handed him the temporary orders. According to people who were there, Marcus actually looked like he might pass out when he read them. He called my office directly, and I took the call. "This is ridiculous," he shouted into the phone. "You've frozen my business accounts. How am I supposed to run my company? How am I supposed to pay my employees?" I kept my voice calm and professional. "Mr. Mitchell, perhaps you should have considered those consequences before you decided to hide marital assets in offshore accounts and waste marital funds on your extramarital affair." "I don't know what you're talking about," he yelled, but I could hear the panic in his voice. He knew exactly what I was talking about. "Then I'm sure you'll have an opportunity to explain everything to the judge at the full hearing. Until then, the temporary orders stand. They were issued based on substantial evidence that you've been dissipating marital assets and hiding money in preparation for divorce. The court takes that very seriously." I let that sink in for a moment before continuing. "I suggest you hire an attorney immediately, Mr. Mitchell, and I suggest you start packing, because you need to be out of the marital home by 8 p.m. tonight. If you're not out voluntarily, Mrs. Mitchell has been authorized to call the police to have you removed." He started to say something else, probably another threat or complaint, but I cut him off. "I'd also suggest you attend to your attitude, Mr. Mitchell. Everything you say and do from this point forward can and will be used in the divorce proceedings. Have a good day." I hung up before he could respond. At 6 o'clock that evening, Marcus arrived at what was no longer his house. Sarah was there waiting for him, calm and composed, with Emma at a friend's house so she wouldn't witness the confrontation. "Sarah, what the hell are you doing?" Marcus demanded as he burst through the door. "This is insane! You can't just throw me out of my own house." Sarah looked at him with those cold, focused eyes. "It's not your house anymore, Marcus. The court has awarded me exclusive use of it. You have until 8 o'clock to pack your personal belongings and leave. I'd suggest you get started because I will call the police at 8:01 if you're still here." Marcus's expressions cycled through shock, anger, and desperation. "This is crazy. We can work this out. Whatever you think is going on with Amber, it's not what you think. We can go to counseling. We can fix this." Sarah actually laughed. A cold, bitter, bad news. 3 days after the gala, Marcus's attorney called my office. His voice was terse and professional, but I could hear the resignation underneath. "My client wants to discuss settlement terms," he said. I leaned back in my chair, not bothering to hide my satisfaction. "Really? That's interesting. What's he offering?" There was a pause. He's willing to give Mrs. Mitchell 60% of all marital assets, primary custody of the daughter with standard visitation for him, and he'll pay all her attorney fees. I pretended to consider this. That's generous, but let's talk specifics. When you say all marital assets, does that include the profit from the Oak Street development deal? Another pause. Yes. Does it include his ownership interest in Mitchell Properties, whatever that's currently worth? Yes, though I should warn you the company's value has dropped significantly in the past week. I smiled even though he couldn't see it. Dropped because of the investigation into financial irregularities that your client created. That's not really my problem, is it? Silence on the other end of the line. I continued. Here's what Mrs. Mitchell wants. 70% of all marital assets, including full ownership of the marital home, with Mr. Mitchell's name removed from the deed. Primary physical custody of Emma, with Miss Mitchell getting supervised visitation every other weekend, until he can demonstrate stable housing and lifestyle. Mr. Mitchell pays 100% of Mrs. Mitchell's attorney fees, which are currently substantial and growing. And finally, Mr. Mitchell signs a formal acknowledgement admitting to adultery and financial misconduct as part of the settlement agreement. Marcus's attorney sputtered. That's outrageous. The admission of misconduct alone could expose my client to criminal liability. I kept my voice calm and reasonable. Then perhaps your client shouldn't have committed misconduct. Look, we both know what happens if this goes to trial. I'm going to subpoena Amber Castellano to testify about the affair in open court. I'm going to bring in the IRS to investigate those offshore accounts and the underreported income. I'm going to put your client on the stand and ask him to explain, under oath and in front of a judge, where $300,000 in marital assets went and why he felt entitled to hide that money from his wife. I'm going to make sure this trial gets maximum media attention. And by the time it's over, your client won't have a reputation left to salvage. I let that sink in before delivering the final blow. My offer is more than fair. It's actually merciful compared to what Mrs. Mitchell could get if we go to trial. Your client committed adultery, dissipated marital assets, hid money in offshore accounts, and potentially committed tax fraud. Any judge is going to look at that evidence and award Mrs. Mitchell significantly more than 70%. I'm offering your client a chance to end this relatively quietly and move on with his life. If he refuses, then we'll see him in court and let a judge decide. But I promise you, it will not go well for Mr. Mitchell. There was a long silence. Finally, Marcus's attorney said, I'll talk to my client and get back to you. 2 days later, he called back. My client agrees to your terms. Just like that, Marcus Mitchell folded completely. The settlement agreement was drafted and signed on December 15th, exactly 1 month after Sarah had filed for divorce. Let me tell you what Sarah got in that settlement, because it was everything she deserved and more. She got the marital home, valued at $1.2 million, with Marcus's name completely removed from the deed. It was hers outright, no shared equity, no future claims. She got 70% of all liquid marital assets, which after accounting for the diminished value of Mitchell Properties and the various accounts, totaled about $2.8 million. She got full ownership of Serenity Wellness, which was technically separate property anyway since she'd built it entirely herself. But we made sure it was explicitly stated in the agreement that Marcus had zero claim to it. She got primary physical custody of Emma with a detailed custody schedule that gave Marcus visitation every other weekend and Wednesday evenings, but only after he could prove he had stable housing. Until then, his visits had to be supervised. She got $5,000 per month in child support, which was actually less than she could have gotten based on Marcus's previous income. But Sarah didn't want to be seen as punitive. She got all of her attorney fees paid by Marcus, which by the time everything was finalized totaled nearly $150,000. And finally, she got Marcus's signature on a document admitting that he had engaged in an extramarital affair with Amber Castellano and had attempted to hide marital assets in an offshore account without his wife's knowledge or consent. That last part was crucial because it meant if Marcus ever tried to change his story or claim Sarah had been vindictive or unfair, She had his own signed admission of wrongdoing to point to. So what did Marcus get out of the settlement? He got his remaining 30% share of the marital assets, which amounted to about $1.2 million. That sounds like a lot, but remember he'd started with access to over $5 million in total assets. He got his business, Mitchell Properties, though it was worth less than half of what it had been before the scandal. Most of his investors had pulled out, his reputation was destroyed, and he was facing potential IRS audits. He got visitation rights with his daughter, but not the joint custody he'd wanted. He'd lost the daily relationship with Emma that he'd taken for granted. He got to keep his BMW and his expensive suits, but he had to move into a modest apartment because he couldn't afford anything else after paying Sarah her settlement. And most significantly, he got the public knowledge that he'd cheated on his wife, lied to everyone, tried to hide money, and been caught. His reputation in the business community was permanently damaged. Oh, and one more thing that I found particularly satisfying. Amber Castellano broke up with Marcus the day after the gala. Apparently, she'd taken Sarah's advice to heart and decided she didn't want to waste her youth on a broke, disgraced man whose best days were behind him. According to gossip that filtered back to Sarah through mutual acquaintances, Amber told Marcus that she'd thought he was successful and stable, but now she realized he was just a liar who'd gotten caught. Marcus tried to win her back, promising that things would get better, that he'd rebuild his business and his reputation, but Amber was done. She moved to another city within a month and blocked Marcus on everything. So Marcus didn't just lose his wife, his money, his home, and his reputation. He also lost the woman he'd thrown everything away for. That, to me, felt like perfect karma. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I met Sarah for coffee on a sunny afternoon in late May. She looked completely transformed from the woman who'd walked into my office 8 months earlier. She was wearing jeans and a Serenity Wellness t-shirt. Her hair was loose and natural, and she had this glow about her that came from genuine happiness rather than just determination. "How's Emma?" I asked as we settled into our seats with our lattes. Sarah's smile was warm and real. "She's thriving. Really, truly thriving. She sees Marcus every other weekend now that he has his own apartment and unsupervised visits, and honestly, it's been good for both of them. Marcus is less distracted now, more present when he's with her. I think losing everything made him realize what actually matters. He's become a better father in some ways, even though he's no longer a husband." She took a sip of her coffee. "Emma asked me the other day if Daddy and I were ever going to get back together. I told her no, that sometimes when grown-ups have problems they can't fix, it's healthier for everyone if they live separately. She seemed to accept that. She's resilient, you know. Kids are more resilient than we give them credit for." I nodded, genuinely glad to hear Emma was doing well. "And how's the business? Serenity Wellness?" Sarah's smile widened into something brilliant. "It's exploding, actually. We're opening our 4th location next month in the suburbs. We've got over 1,200 online subscribers now paying for virtual classes. Our projected revenue for this year is $1.2 million, and I just hired a full-time business manager to handle operations, which means I can step back from the administrative work and actually teach yoga again. That's what I love most, being on the mat with students, helping them find balance and strength." "That's incredible, Sarah. You've built something really special." She nodded, looking proud. "The best part is that it's all mine. Every decision, every success, every challenge, it's all mine to own. I'm not building someone else's dream anymore or supporting someone else's vision. This is my company, my success, my legacy for Emma." I studied her face, seeing the peace there. "You're not angry anymore." Sarah considered this. "No, I'm not. For a while, especially during those 3 weeks of planning and the divorce proceedings, I was consumed by it. I was so focused on making Marcus pay, on destroying what he'd built, on getting revenge. But now, I'm just happy. I'm building something I love, raising my daughter, living on my own terms." The anger burned itself out once justice was served. Do you ever talk to Marcus? I asked. Only about Emma. We have a co-parenting app where we communicate about schedules and school stuff. We're cordial but distant. I heard through mutual acquaintances that he's been trying to rebuild Mitchell Properties, but it's an uphill battle. A lot of people in the business community won't work with him after everything that came out. Do you feel bad about that? I asked, curious. Sarah thought about it carefully, stirring her coffee. No, I feel like he's facing the natural consequences of his own choices. I didn't make him cheat on me. I didn't make him hide assets or lie to investors or underreport income on taxes. I didn't make him treat me like I was stupid and worthless. All I did was make sure he couldn't get away with those things. I made sure there were consequences. If his business is struggling now, that's because people made informed decisions about whether they wanted to work with someone of questionable character. That's not my fault. That's his. She paused, then added, You know what someone told me last week? A woman came up to me after a yoga class, and she was crying. She said my story had inspired her to finally leave her own bad marriage. She'd been feeling trapped and powerless for years, but seeing how I'd handled my situation made her realize she had options and she had strength. She said I'd changed her life. Sarah's eyes got a little misty. That meant more to me than any amount of money or any revenge I got against Marcus, knowing that by standing up for myself, I helped another woman find the courage to do the same thing. That's impact. That's purpose. I felt genuinely moved by her words. You've become a role model, Sarah, whether you intended to or not. She laughed softly. I didn't intend any of this. I just intended to survive and protect myself and my daughter. But if my story helps other women, then something good came out of something painful. I'll take that. What would you say to other women in similar situations? I asked. Women who've just discovered their husband is cheating or hiding money or planning to leave them. Sarah thought for a long moment before answering. I'd say document everything. Every text message, every credit card charge, every conversation, every lie. Keep records because those records become your power. I'd say know your worth, both personally and financially. Understand what you've contributed to the marriage and what you're entitled to legally. Don't let anyone make you feel like you don't deserve your fair share. She continued. I'd say get good professional help. A good attorney like you, a good forensic accountant, a good therapist to help you process the emotions. You can't do this alone, and you shouldn't try to. I'd say don't let anger make you reckless, but don't let fear make you weak either. You can be strategic and emotional at the same time. You can be hurt and still be strong. She took another sip of coffee. And I'd say remember that the best revenge isn't hurting the other person. The best revenge is building a better life for yourself. Yes, make sure they face consequences for their actions. Absolutely stand up for yourself and fight for what you deserve. But don't let the revenge become your whole purpose. Let it be a step towards something better, not the end goal itself. She smiled slightly. Though I won't lie and say making sure Marcus faced consequences didn't feel satisfying. It absolutely did. But what feels even better is waking up every morning in my own house, running my own business, making my own decisions, and knowing that I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. I smiled back at her. Any regrets? Sarah shook her head firmly. Not a single one. Well, maybe one small one. I regret not seeing who Marcus really was sooner. I regret wasting 7 years on someone who didn't value me. But then again, if I hadn't married Marcus, I wouldn't have Emma, and she's the best thing that ever happened to me. So even the painful parts led to something good. As we finished our coffee and prepared to say goodbye, Sarah reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Thank you, Jennifer. For believing me, for fighting for me, for helping me navigate the hardest time of my life. I couldn't have done this without you. I squeezed back. You did the hard part, Sarah. I just made sure it was legal. You were the one who had the courage to stand up for yourself and the intelligence to do it strategically. That was all you. We hugged goodbye in the parking lot, and I watched Sarah drive away in her car. She wasn't driving Marcus's old BMW anymore. She'd bought herself a sensible but nice SUV that suited her lifestyle. Everything about her radiated confidence and self-possession. She was no longer the woman who'd been betrayed. She was the woman who'd fought back and won. 3 months after that coffee meeting, I got a text from Sarah with a photo attached. It showed her and Emma at the grand opening of Serenity Wellness's 5th location. They were both wearing matching yoga outfits, holding a ceremonial pair of scissors, surrounded by supporters and friends and students. Both of them were beaming with genuine joy. The caption read, "Living well is the best revenge. But making sure they face consequences doesn't hurt either. Thank you for everything." I saved that photo because it perfectly captured what Sarah had accomplished. She hadn't just survived her divorce. She'd thrived. She'd built an empire, raised her daughter, and become an inspiration to other women. And yes, she'd made sure Marcus paid for what he'd done. That's the thing about revenge that most people don't understand. True revenge, satisfying revenge, isn't about being cruel or vindictive. It's not about causing pain for the sake of causing pain. Real revenge is about refusing to be a victim. It's about standing up for yourself and demanding that actions have consequences. It's about making sure that people who do wrong things don't just get to walk away unscathed while you're left picking up the pieces. Sarah Mitchell taught me that you don't have to choose between justice and moving forward. You can have both. You can fight for what you deserve. Make sure the person who hurt you faces appropriate consequences, and still build a better life for yourself. In fact, those things work together. Fighting for yourself builds confidence, getting justice helps you heal, and building a better life proves that you're stronger than whatever tried to break you. 6 months after that photo, I ran into Marcus at a professional event. He'd been invited to speak on a panel about commercial real estate development, probably before the organizers realized his reputation was damaged. He looked older than his years, tired and worn down in a way that had nothing to do with age and everything to do with stress and regret. When he saw me, he actually approached, which surprised me. "Miss Torres," he said, his voice careful and neutral. "Mr. Mitchell," I replied equally carefully. "How are you?" He laughed, but it was a bitter sound. "I'm surviving. Mitchell Properties is slowly rebuilding. I've got a few new investors, some smaller projects. It's not what it was, but it's something." I nodded, not sure what he wanted from this conversation. He looked down at his drink, then back up at me. "I know you probably don't want to hear this, and I know it doesn't change anything, but I need to say it. I was wrong. About everything. About Sarah, about the affair, about hiding money, all of it. I was arrogant and stupid, and I destroyed the best thing in my life because I thought I was smarter than everyone else." I studied him, trying to determine if this was genuine remorse or just self-pity. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. Marcus shrugged. "Because you were right that day on the phone when you told me I'd regret this. I do regret it. Every single day. I lost my wife, my daughter's daily presence, my home, most of my money, my reputation, and my self-respect. And for what? A few months with a woman who didn't actually care about me? The thrill of thinking I was getting away with something? It was the stupidest trade I've ever made." He took a sip of his drink. "I see Sarah's face everywhere now. Her business is all over social media. She's giving talks at business conferences. She's been featured in magazines. She's become this symbol of female entrepreneurship and resilience. And every time I see her success, I'm reminded that I had that woman in my life and I threw her away because I was too stupid to appreciate what I had." I didn't know what to say to that. Part of me felt a sliver of sympathy for him because genuine remorse deserves acknowledgement. But a larger part of me remembered Sarah's tears, Emma's confusion, and the systematic betrayal that Marcus had committed. "Mr. Mitchell," I said finally, "I appreciate you sharing that, but you should know that Sarah doesn't think about you anymore. She's not angry, she's not bitter, she's just moved on. She's built a life that makes her happy, and you're not part of that life, except as her daughter's father." Your remorse doesn't change what you did or the consequences you're facing. Those consequences are the price you pay for your choices. Marcus nodded slowly. I know, and I deserve every bit of it. I just wanted someone to know that I understand now. I understand what I lost and what I threw away. For whatever that's worth, it's worth something, I said honestly. Remorse and self-awareness are important for growth. I hope you become a better person because of this experience. I hope you learn to value honesty and integrity. And I hope you're a good father to Emma, because she deserves that. Marcus's eyes got a little watery. I'm trying to be. She's the only good thing I didn't completely destroy. I'm not going to screw that up too. We parted ways after that, and I never spoke to Marcus Mitchell again. But that conversation stayed with me because it confirmed what Sarah had been trying to achieve all along. She didn't just want to hurt Marcus. She wanted him to understand, really understand, what he'd done wrong and why it was wrong. She wanted him to face consequences and learn from them. And apparently, he had. Whether that remorse was too little too late is not for me to judge. But it proved that Sarah's approach had worked. She'd stood up for herself, fought for what she deserved, made sure Marcus faced consequences for his actions, and in doing so, possibly helped him become a better person. That's about as close to perfect revenge as you can get. So what's the lesson in all of this? What did I learn from representing Sarah Mitchell in the most calculated divorce I've ever witnessed? I learned that you don't have to accept being a victim. I learned that intelligence and strategy are more powerful than anger and vindictiveness. I learned that the best revenge is built on truth, not lies. Everything Sarah did to Marcus was based on facts she could prove. She didn't exaggerate or invent anything. She simply made sure the truth was known by the people who needed to know it. I learned that you can be hurt and heartbroken and still be strategic and smart. Sarah was devastated by Marcus's betrayal. But she didn't let that devastation make her weak or reckless. She channeled her pain into planning and executed that plan with precision. I learned that sometimes the people who underestimate you give you your greatest advantage. Marcus dismissed Sarah as a stupid, dependent housewife, and that blind spot is exactly what allowed her to build her case without him suspecting anything. His arrogance was his downfall. And most importantly, I learned that real power comes from building yourself up, not from tearing others down. Yes, Sarah destroyed Marcus's reputation and took most of his money, but that wasn't her end goal. Her end goal was creating a better life for herself and her daughter, and the destruction of Marcus was just a necessary step along that path. Sarah Mitchell didn't just get revenge on her cheating husband. She transformed herself from a woman who'd been made to feel small and insignificant into a successful entrepreneur, a role model, and an inspiration. She proved that you can face betrayal and come out stronger, that you can lose everything you thought you had and build something even better, that you can be knocked down and still win. That's the kind of revenge that lasts. Not the momentary satisfaction of hurting someone who hurt you, but the permanent satisfaction of proving that you're stronger, smarter, and more resilient than they ever gave you credit for. And honestly, that's beautiful. That's justice. That's perfect revenge. So here's my question for you, and I really want you to think about this. Was Sarah's revenge justified? Did she go too far, or did she do exactly what needed to be done? If you discovered your spouse was cheating, hiding money, and planning to leave you with nothing, what would you do? Would you have the strength to be as strategic as Sarah was? Would you fight back? Or would you just try to move on quietly? And here's the harder question. If someone you loved betrayed you the way Marcus betrayed Sarah, could you channel your pain into planning instead of letting it consume you? Could you be smart enough to wait, to document, to build your case before making your move? Let me know in the comments what you think. I'm genuinely curious how you'd handle a situation like this, because it's easy to say what you'd do, but actually doing it when you're heartbroken and angry is incredibly difficult. And if this story resonated with you, if it made you think about justice and consequences and standing up for yourself, please hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. We tell true stories about people who refused to be victims, who fought back against betrayal and injustice, and who proved that sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to lose. Thank you for watching. And remember, living well is the best revenge. But making sure they face consequences doesn't hurt either. I'll see you in the next story.